Eyes in the darkness. Do not go into the hills. The monster is watching. The monster is waiting. If you go searching for love, you might only find death. Between 1968 and 1985, someone moved through the hills surrounding Florence, Italy. 8 crime scenes, 16 people, 1 weapon. A .22 caliber Beretta pistol firing Winchester Series H copper-jacketed rounds with a distinctive die stamp pressed into the base of each casing. The Italian press called him Il Mostro, the Monster of Florence. He was never conclusively identified. His case is officially open, and the hills are still there, exactly as he left them. By the end of this video, you will have the name of every victim, the details of every crime scene, the full story of the investigation that consumed everyone who entered it, including a journalist who was arrested, an American novelist who was told to leave the country, and a family whose secrets may hold the answer to the entire case. Florence in the 1960s and 1970s was a city of density, ancient buildings, shared apartments, multiple generations living in close quarters. Privacy for young people was not available indoors, so they drove into the surrounding countryside, onto quiet roads where the city's lights gave way to darkness, and the only sound was wind moving through olive groves. These roads had a name among the young people who used them: Le strade degli innamorati, the roads of lovers. By the early 1980s, Italian newspapers were using a different phrase: Le strade della morte, the roads of death. The communities of the Florentine hillside, Scandicci, Calenzano, Vicchio, San Casciano, were ordinary places, agricultural, close-knit, the kind of towns where a stranger's car is noticed and faces are known, which makes what happened across 17 years even harder to absorb. Every behavioral indicator in the documented record suggests the Monster of Florence was not a stranger in these hills. He knew which roads were used, at which hours, in which seasons. He watched, he waited, he returned. He was local. In a moment, we will tell you about the night this began, about a woman named Barbara Locci, her 6-year-old son, and a road outside Lastra a Signa that produced the first victim, the first conviction, and a family whose contradictions would shadow this investigation for the next 40 years. Barbara Locci was 30 years old. She was originally from Sardinia. She had a husband, Stefano Mele, also Sardinian, and a 6-year-old son named Natalino. Her marriage was, by every documented account, deeply troubled. She had a history of extramarital relationships, several of them with men from the same tight Sardinian community living in and around Florence. On the night of August 21, 1968, Barbara was in a parked vehicle near Lastra a Signa with a man named Antonio Lobianco, 29 years old, an iceman from the area. Her son, Natalino, was in the back seat, asleep. Both Barbara Locci and Antonio Lobianco were killed by gunshot wounds from a .22 caliber firearm. Natalino Mele, 6 years old, was found that night at a farmhouse some distance from the crime scene. How he arrived there has never been definitively established. In his earliest accounts, he appeared to have walked alone in the dark. In later testimony, given across subsequent years, Natalino described being carried by a man who, in some versions of his account, he named or indicated by gesture. If Natalino was carried to that farmhouse by someone present at the scene, that person was either the killer or an accomplice, and they made a deliberate choice to deliver a 6-year-old child to safety. That choice implies a boundary, something they would not cross. It implies, possibly, someone who knew the boy. That single contested detail, walk or carry, is the first unresolved question in a case that would accumulate dozens more. Stefano Mele, Barbara's husband, was arrested, interrogated, convicted, and imprisoned. But his path to conviction was not clean. He confessed. He recanted. He confessed again, each time naming different accomplices, different versions, different men from the Sardinian community surrounding Barbara Locci's life. At various points, Mele implicated his own brothers-in-law. He named multiple men. He changed his account with a consistency that, decades later, Italian investigators would describe in precise terms. Stefano Mele was not misremembering. He was managing. He was protecting someone. And he never fully stopped. He served 10 years. He was released. The case appeared closed. It was not closed, because 6 years later, the same gun reappeared, and Stefano Mele was not holding it. To understand who held that weapon after 1968, you have to understand the social world Barbara Locci moved through. Among her known associates was a man named Francesco Vinci, Sardinian, a former lover of Barbara Locci, and a figure who would become one of the most extensively investigated individuals in the entire Monster of Florence case. His brother, Salvatore Vinci, was also drawn into the investigation at multiple points across the following 2 decades. The theory around Francesco Vinci was specific. He, or someone in his immediate orbit, had been present at the 1968 Lastra Asigna scene. And the crimes that followed, from 1974 onward, were either committed by him or connected to him through the chain of that gun. Vinci was arrested. He was investigated at length. He was ultimately not convicted of the monster murders. In 1993, Francesco Vinci was murdered, killed in what Italian investigators classified as a separate criminal matter unconnected to Il Mostro. A man who had spent years at the center of Italy's most scrutinized criminal investigation died violently before that investigation resolved. His death permanently closed one avenue of inquiry. Whatever Francesco Vinci knew, he took it with him. Salvatore Vinci, Francesco's brother, was also investigated in connection with the monster crimes across multiple phases of the case. Like his brother, he was never convicted. The Vinci family's proximity to the case, through Barbara Locci, through the Sardinian community, through the provenance of the weapon, was never transformed into evidence that held up in court. This is where Mario Spezzi enters the story for the first time. Not yet as a victim of the investigation, that comes much later, but as the journalist who, from the early 1980s onward, was documenting everything. Building a record of the Sardinian Connection, the Vinci brothers, the contradictions in Mele's testimony. That record would eventually make him, in the eyes of one chief inspector, a suspect. We will come back to what happened to Spezzi, but understand, his presence in this case begins here, before Pietro Pacciani's name had ever been spoken in connection with Il Mostro. Mario Spezzi was a crime reporter for the Florentine newspaper La Nazione. He covered the monster crimes as they happened, from the early 1980s forward. He developed sources inside the investigation. He understood the ballistic evidence and the Sardinian timeline at a depth that, over time, surpassed most investigators officially assigned to the case. That knowledge would later be used against him. 6 years passed. No linked incident. No indication the 1968 weapon had been used again. Then, on the night of September 14, 1974, the bodies of Pasquale Gentilcore and Stefania Pettini were found in a parked vehicle near the hamlet of Rabata outside Borgo San Lorenzo. Pasquale was 19, Stefania was 18. They were students. Ballistic analysis confirmed the unthinkable. This was the same weapon used 6 years earlier at Lastra Asigna. The same gun, the same dye stamp on the casings, the same firearm that had been present at the night Natalino Mele was found walking, or being carried, down a dark road. Stefano Mele was in prison in 1974. He had not touched that weapon, which meant the gun had been in someone else's possession for 6 years, stored, maintained, kept ready. The 1974 scene also introduced a forensic detail that would recur across subsequent crime scenes, evidence of deliberate post-mortem staging. Investigators documented that Stefania Pettini's body had been disturbed after death in a manner pathologists described as purposeful, not frenzied, considered. This detail entered the forensic record in 1974 and would not be the last time it appeared. The 6-year gap between 1968 and 1974 has never been definitively explained. Was the perpetrator incapacitated? Did life circumstances interrupt the pattern? Or was there a different hand on the weapon before 1974 than after? The answer to that question is the key to the monster's true identity. It has never been found. 7 more years of silence. Then 1981 arrived, and it arrived twice. On the evening of June 6, 1981, Giovanni Foggi and Carmela Denuccio were found in a parked vehicle near Scandicci, southwest of Florence. Giovanni was 30, Carmela was 21. The ballistic evidence confirmed the series. 13 years after the weapon first appeared, it had now killed 4 more people. This was also the first crime scene at which investigators documented the removal of anatomical material from the female victim. Forensic pathologists noted the nature and method of the removal in their reports. The language they used was deliberate. This was not consistent with spontaneous or disorganized violence. It bore the characteristics of considered, unhurried action. A local man named Enzo Spalletti was arrested in connection with this crime. He had been overheard speaking about the incident with details not yet released to the public. He was held while investigators built a case. His alibi eventually held, he was released. Spalletti was the first in a long line of men this investigation would arrest, hold, and ultimately release without resolution. 4 months later, October 22, 1981, Stefano Baldi and Susanna Cambi were found near Calenzano, north of Florence. Stefano was 26, Susanna was 24. They were engaged to be married. An engagement ring was recovered at the scene. 2 double homicides in a single calendar year. Same weapon, same geographic territory, same victim profile. The Italian national press formally acknowledged Il Mostro as an active, documented series. The name would not leave the front pages for 4 more years. Mario Spezzi, covering the case for La Nazione, was by this point one of the most informed journalists in Italy on the subject. He had sources inside the investigation. He understood the ballistic chain. He was building the institutional knowledge that would later make him simultaneously the most valuable independent expert on the case and a target of it. 2 scenes in 1981. Then, barely 8 months later, the case produced its only near witness, a man who survived long enough to be found, transported to hospital, and died before he could speak a single word. On the night of June 19, 1982, Paolo Mainardi and Antonella Migliorini were attacked near Monte Spertoli, south of Florence. Paolo was 22, Antonella was 20. Antonella Migliorini died at the scene. Paolo Mainardi did not. A passing motorist discovered the vehicle and found Mainardi alive. Emergency services were called. He was transported to hospital. For a brief, desperate window, Italian investigators believed they were about to receive the one thing that had eluded them across 5 crime scenes and 14 years: a living account. Paolo Mainardi died in hospital without regaining consciousness. He left no verbal testimony. What his injuries documented, entered into the forensic record by pathologists who examined him, was a sequence of events at the scene. He had attempted to start the vehicle. He had been incapacitated before he could. The monster had returned to the vehicle after the initial attack to confirm the outcome. That behavioral detail, the return, is among the most significant data points in the entire case. It documents control. It documents someone who was not panicking and was not hurrying. And then, the following year, the monster made what appeared to be an error. He approached a vehicle without confirming who was inside. What he found that night changed the behavioral profile of the entire case, and it is the most under-discussed scene in English-language coverage of Il Mostro. On the night of September 9, 1983, A camper van was parked on a country road near the hamlet of Giogoli, outside Scandicci. Inside were two young German men, Horst Wilhelm Meyer and Uwe Rusch Sens, both 24, both traveling through Tuscany on holiday. Both were killed. The ballistic evidence matched the series. Every prior victim pair after 1968 had consisted of a man and a woman. The monster's pattern, the vehicle, the rural road, the darkness, the couple, had been consistent across 5 scenes and 15 years. In 1983, he killed 2 men. The forensic interpretation most widely accepted is that he approached the camper van from an angle or in conditions that prevented him from confirming the sex of the occupants before he acted. He did not verify. He proceeded anyway. This is not incidental. A predator operating with documented precision across 15 years does not make this error from carelessness alone. It tells investigators something about his urgency in 1983, his escalating confidence, his diminishing patience for preparation. What is not disputed, Horst Meyer and Uwe Rusch Sens were German tourists who drove into the Tuscan countryside and parked on a quiet road. They were 24 years old. They had never heard of Il Mostro. And here is what the documentary record also shows. By 1984, the monster had corrected himself. He returned to his established pattern, a male-female couple confirmed before approach. That correction is itself behaviorally significant. This was not a deteriorating mind. This was someone who evaluated what went wrong in 1983 and adjusted. 1 year after the Giogoli anomaly, the monster chose a victim whose community would never stop saying her name. Pia Rontini was 18 years old. She was the daughter of a bar owner in Vicchio, a small town northeast of Florence, known as the birthplace of the painter Fra Angelico. On the night of July 29, 1984, Pia and her companion, Claudio Stefanacci, 21, were found near Vicchio. The ballistic evidence confirmed the series. Pia Rontini was not an abstraction. She was the girl from the bar, a face the town recognized. Her death landed in Vicchio not as national news, but as personal grief. The monster had, until now, operated on the edges of communities. In Vicchio, he had reached inside one. Nadine Mario was 36 years old. She was French. She spoke no Italian. She was on holiday in Tuscany with Jean-Michel Cravicchvili, 25, also French. They had no connection to Florence, to the investigation, to any prior victim, or to any element of the case. They were tourists. They parked on a hillside road on an evening in early September. In every ordinary sense, they had done nothing except be in the wrong place. Both were killed. The ballistic evidence confirmed the series. Within weeks of this final crime scene, an envelope arrived at the office of prosecutor Silvia Della Monica in Florence. Inside was anatomical material consistent with forensic evidence from the San Casciano scene. It was addressed by hand. Italian investigators would spend the next 2 decades analyzing what that handwriting revealed about the person who sent it. After September 1985, the documented series ends. No further crime scene was attributed to the Monster of Florence. The gun was never found. The case was never closed. 16 people, 8 scenes, 17 years, and then silence. Why it stopped is, in many ways, the most important question in the entire case. And the answer, when you hear it, will change how you understand everything that came before it.